The night my boss insisted I go on a blind date, I almost didn't make it to the restaurant at all. Rain lashed against the windshield of my old sedan as I sat in the parking lot, hands tight around the steering wheel, wondering how my life had somehow come to this. Just 6 months earlier, everything I had carefully built had collapsed in a matter of days. My engagement had ended, my apartment had been emptied of everything that once felt like home, and the only thing left standing was my job at a publishing firm in downtown Chicago. My boss, Victoria Hayes, had watched me quietly drown myself in work ever since, and when she handed me the reservation card that afternoon with an unreadable smile, she told me this was not a suggestion but a favor I owed myself. I walked into that dimly lit restaurant expecting awkward small talk with a stranger. What I did not expect was the moment the door opened and her daughter walked in. Before we go further, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and the way life sometimes surprises us when we least expect it, please take a moment to like this video, comment where you're watching from, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to the channel for more emotional stories that touch the heart. Her name was Hannah Brooks, and the moment I saw her, the world seemed to tilt beneath me. She stood near the entrance, shaking rain from her dark coat, her auburn hair falling in soft waves over her shoulders, her expression frozen in the same shock that must have been on my face. I knew her. Not from the office, and not because Victoria had ever shown me family photos. I knew her because 3 years earlier, on the worst night of my life, she had been the stranger who sat beside me in the emergency room waiting area at Mercy General Hospital in Boston. My younger brother, Nathan, had been fighting for his life after a car accident, and I had been broken beyond words. She had been there waiting for news about her father after a heart attack. We had spoken for only 2 hours, but those 2 hours had carried me through a night that I thought would destroy me forever. She recognized me instantly. The years between then and now had changed us both. I was older, more tired, carrying invisible scars behind my smile. Hannah looked stronger somehow, but there was still a quiet sadness in her eyes, the kind you only notice if you know pain yourself. She walked slowly toward the table, and as she sat down across from me, it felt less like a blind date and more like fate reopening a door I had long believed was closed. At first, the evening was wrapped in an almost unbearable awkwardness. Neither of us understood why Victoria had arranged this, and both of us were too stunned to hide it. But slowly, as the minutes passed and the candlelight flickered between us, the tension gave way to memory. We spoke about Boston, about that night in the hospital, about the strange comfort of talking to someone who knew nothing about your life yet somehow understood your pain better than anyone else. Nathan had survived, though the road afterward had been long and difficult. Hannah's father, however, had passed away 2 days after that night. She admitted that she had never forgotten the young man who sat beside her, holding back tears while pretending to be strong for his family. That was when I realized something even more unsettling than seeing her walk in. I had never forgotten her either. Back then, life had swept us in different directions before we could exchange more than first names. For years she had remained a memory, one of those rare people who enter your life for only a moment yet leave something permanent behind. And now she was here, sitting across from me in a quiet Chicago restaurant while the rain tapped softly against the windows like a heartbeat. The weeks that followed changed everything. Victoria, of course, pretended she had no idea we had met before, but the knowing smile she wore every morning at the office told a different story. Hannah and I began seeing each other, not because it was some perfect romantic fantasy, but because being together felt strangely natural. We carried similar wounds. She had spent the last 2 years caring for her mother after a difficult surgery while trying to keep her own architectural business alive. I was still trying to rebuild trust after my former fiancé left me for someone else just weeks before our wedding. Neither of us came into this new connection whole. That was the challenge. Love, when it arrives after heartbreak, does not come dressed in certainty. It comes with fear, it comes with hesitation. Every late reply to a text felt like a warning to me. Every moment of silence made Hannah wonder if she was being abandoned again. We both carried ghosts into every room we entered together. One evening, walking along the Chicago River under a cold autumn sky, Hannah finally let the truth spill out. She told me she was terrified of trusting happiness because every time life had seemed to soften, it had found a new way to hurt her. I wanted to tell her I understood, but words felt too small. Instead, I simply stayed beside her, letting the silence say what language could not. Days turned into months. For the first time in years, my life began to feel less like survival and more like living. Sunday mornings became coffee and long walks through Millennium Park. Snowy evenings became old movies in her apartment while the city lights glowed outside like stars trapped in glass. Hannah had a way of making ordinary moments feel sacred. Yet even as our bond deepened, one final storm remained. Victoria called me into her office just before Christmas. I thought it was about work, but instead she closed the door and sat down with a seriousness that made my chest tighten. She confessed that she had recognized my name the moment Hannah once mentioned the man from the hospital years ago. She had pieced it together and arranged the date intentionally, but there was more. Hannah had recently been offered a major architectural project in Seattle, a career-defining opportunity that would require her to move across the country. The news hit me harder than I expected. Just when life had begun to heal, it seemed ready to test us again. That night, Hannah told me everything through tears. She had been afraid to bring it up because she didn't want to lose what we had found. The old version of me, the broken man still haunted by abandonment, wanted to pull away before I could be left behind. But something had changed inside me because of her. Instead of running, I chose honesty. I told her that real love was not about possession, it was about courage. If this opportunity was her dream, then she had to take it, even if it terrified both of us. Before the ending, I want to ask something special from all of you watching. Comment below with the words, "Second chances are real," if you believe life can still surprise us with beautiful endings after heartbreak. The final weeks before her departure were bittersweet, filled with quiet tears and unforgettable moments. On the morning of her flight, I drove her to O'Hare Airport while the first snow of winter fell softly over the city. At the terminal entrance, with people rushing past us and loudspeaker announcements echoing overhead, Hannah turned to me with tears in her eyes and told me that meeting me twice in one lifetime could not be an accident. Then she handed me an envelope. Inside was a plane ticket, Seattle, 1 month later. Along with it was a handwritten note that simply said she did not want a goodbye, only a beginning. 1 month later, I stood in Seattle beneath a pale winter sky, stepping into the city where Hannah had begun building her future. She was waiting for me outside her new office building, smiling through tears, and in that moment every broken piece of my past suddenly made sense. Sometimes life takes everything from you, not to punish you, but to make room for something greater than you ever imagined. If this story touched your heart, please like, comment, and share this video with someone who needs to believe in second chances. And don't forget to subscribe for more emotional, inspiring stories that remind us all that love often finds us when we least expect it. As I walked toward Hannah, with the Seattle skyline glowing behind her and snow falling gently around us, I understood something that had taken me years to learn. The most beautiful chapters of life often begin with the moments that first feel like endings. Sometimes the blind date you never wanted becomes the miracle you never saw coming. And sometimes, the person who walks through the door is not just someone from your past, but the answer to every prayer your broken heart was too afraid to speak aloud.